Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Leslie, and I work for the Federation for Children with Special Needs. We are a nonprofit that's based in Boston, but we work statewide, and we help families of kids with special needs, all different disability types, and we help you navigate all the different systems that you have to, not only the educational systems, but healthcare systems, and we hopefully can answer your questions. So today my colleague Ruth and I are splitting this presentation, and we're doing kind of two different parts. The first part, I'll be talking a little bit about the state and federal guidance around what's happening for schools and special education during COVID-19. I have been at the Federation for about 10 years. I run the MASFEC project, which supports special education parent advisory councils, and I give them advice and consult us how to set up and run a CPAC. It's really a great group. If you don't belong to your community's, your school district CPAC, I would suggest that you connect to them. Those are families within your school district that are going through special education and can help you navigate. I'm a parent of two sons, they're now adult sons, who have gone through school on IEPs, and I also have a background in the law. I'm an attorney. So that's what brings me here, but I really like helping families figure it all out. And right now, we need to figure it all out. Here are the topics that I'm gonna cover, just kind of an introduction to what's happening with this global crisis and what's happened since schools have closed, understanding all the different things that have happen in terms of extensions and equity issues, the fact that schools have local authority to make some of these decisions. I'll talk about some of the federal and state guidance that has set up school remote learning, and there's been some recent guidance around IEP meetings and timelines. So that's just a little bit of a sense of where I'm going today. So this kind of came on pretty quickly for a lot of us here in Massachusetts. We'd heard about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and how it was affecting other parts of the state, mainly in California, and all of a sudden it was here in Massachusetts. And very quickly there was an announcement that schools would close for a couple of weeks so that we could lower the curve and prevent that influx of cases into hospitals so that we could deal with it here in Massachusetts. And I think the first thing that everyone was concerned with, especially from our State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, was the health and safety of not only students but educators. How are we going to keep people safe and close everything down for a little while so that we could deal with this crisis. And I think it was not only sudden for families, but it was sudden for educators, that all of a sudden we were closed, and what were we going to do? One of the first issues for a lot of schools was how do we continue to provide food for families? Those packets were prepared and sent out in buses. Our families went to schools to pick them up, but it was one of the first concerns, and I think the schools did a really great job around communicating to families and getting food available, and they're still doing it in a lot of school districts. I've seen stories about bus drivers who are really feeling very important that they were delivering that much needed food to families. So that was one of the first concerns, was not only keeping everyone safe, but how are we going to provide food for families. And they started communication chains. They started posting things on websites. They started sending emails home to families and trying to inform them what was happening. And things were changing very, very quickly. So I think it was a shock for everyone. And that was kind of the phase one of what we've been going through. And then we saw some extensions of these school closings. And those are communicated and determined by our governor with consultation with health authorities, the Department of Health here in Massachusetts, and there was a determination made that we were going to extend the school closures. So what we all thought was a couple of weeks, maybe just kind of get through, became a couple more weeks. And here families were all of a sudden confronted with being at home with their students and all of a sudden having to care for them and to continue educating them at home. So this is only, I think, people just stop and realize this has only been about 2.5 months that we've been in this phase. And so we're just really learning and reacting as a whole community to all the different changes in our school environment. On March 26th, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, I'll refer to it as DESE probably from now on, that's the acronym that we use, made recommendations, but they weren't requirements of schools. And they allow, because every school has a different budget, a different school board, they've allowed local schools to have some control over what's happening. And it's also a health determination made by each individual public health department in your community as to how long schools are going to be closed. So working together, there were some recommendations around how learning should continue. And we saw a variation of remote learning models across the state. And I think in this time of social media where people are connecting in different Facebook groups and on Twitter, there was a lot of concern from families of like, well, gee, that student's getting this and I'm only getting that. And there was a lot of discussion, I think, online, and a lot of that feedback got to the Department of Education as to, what's really happening across the state. We also saw a lot of issues related to the lack of technology on the part of families and students, and the inequities around internet access. So a family might only have a phone or one kind of computer device to access learning, and that might have been shared among the parents or other family members who are trying to work during that time, or several students who might be trying to access any kind of online learning, remote learning. And so the challenges around technology and internet access made it a little unequal for all families to access. And so the early remote learning was sensitive to that, and it wasn't a requirement, only recommendations. We also know that there was issues around language access, that families who did not speak English as a first language, it was difficult for them to get the information. Not everything was translated, and it was difficult for, I believe, a lot of parents to support their students in accessing some of these new platforms. I think we're all pretty good with Zoom now, but about 2 months ago, Zoom was a new word, and it's a whole new language and a whole new way of doing things. The availability of a family to assist the student in these remote learnings is very different, challenging for a lot of families. Some families are essential workers and have to remain in the workplace, and other family members could stay home and parents could stay home. And it's all been very, very different. So these are all considerations that our State Department of Education had to consider. And so that they told the school districts was that we're going to have a planning period. And this is all phase 2 of rolling out remote learning for all students, and how's it going to work. And every school district had a little bit different approach to how they started this and how they approached it. I heard from several school districts that had very great intentions and approached Zoom and asked for multiple platforms and were told, yeah, we'll get back to you in about 2 months. We're really backed up right now. So not only for families was it challenging, but it was also challenging for school districts. So then the guidance started to come out, and it was like, what is really supposed to be happening? From our U.S. Department of Education, there was federal guidance around education. The original one back in March 12th said that if school district is not open and it's not providing educational services to all students, then we don't really need to provide free and appropriate public education around special education for special education students. So if there was no school, no services, the original guidance was kind of open around, well, there wasn't directives around providing special education. That changed on March 21st. There was a big pushback from a lot of nonprofits across the country saying you need to be really clear that our Individuals with Disability Education Act requires that you provide services for students. This is contractual. As part of the law, we have IEPs, individual education plans for students, and you need to provide services. So as a result of that, in our own state, the guidance came out on March 26th, recognizing that we needed to provide FAPE, or that special education for students. But it was still like a planning period. It was still reaching out to families to really determine what services could happen and what the plan would be. And I'll talk about remote learning on the next slide, but I just wanted to go through all the different guidances that have come out. And it seems to be almost every week there's something new to react to, something new to learn. And we still don't have a lot of guidance on a lot of areas around school and special education. There's been a fact sheet coming out from the federal government just recently on May 18th around English language learners and the fact that school districts have to provide language instruction and accommodations so those students can access all education, and especially special education. There have been resource toolboxes that are coming out, and my colleague Ruth is going to talk a little bit about all the different ways that you can access supports around learning virtually. We're all in this new virtual online world. And the latest guidance to come out from our Department of Education on May 22nd spoke to those IEP and special education timelines. The federal government had been given, gave the U.S. Department of Education a 30-day time period to investigate whether IEP timelines under IDEA should be suspended during this crisis. And there was a long period of waiting where school districts were not conducting IEP meetings and not scheduling them and suspending everything for about 30 days until the end of May. And now there's been a realization that they're not acting, that they have held IEPs timelines to be in full force and effect, and now there's a catch-up, and you see a guidance coming out from our state saying to school districts, no, you can have virtual IEP meetings, and those timelines still go forward. So during this time period, we've had conflicting guidance. We've had guidance that comes out from the federal government and then is reinforced in the state government, and then back to the federal government and back and forth. I don't know if you're aware that there's been changes in the competency determination around who will graduate and who's eligible to graduate. And there's also been changes in state law around MCAS testing, standardized testing.
I'm sorry, could we?
All been suspended for this spring. Some initial challenges have been setting up all these different online platforms for schools to function. I talked a little bit earlier about how it was difficult for schools to get access to Google Classroom and Zoom platforms and teach their educators how to use those platforms and incorporate them. And there was a balance between materials and resources and online instruction. There was supposed to be a balance, and some school districts were just getting packets out to people, and some had formal online instruction. But it all really depended on how the school district reacted and their resources. There were some challenges around special education early on, where the speech and language pathologists could not perform that online telepractice or teletherapy because of the licensing restrictions. So there had to be going through a formal process to waive all of those within the Speech and Language Association so that the therapist could deliver services. There was a lot of issues around security and confidentiality, and should families have to sign consents and waivers and all of these different things. So every school district was challenged around how they were going to deliver remote learning to students. The initial remote learning plans were more enrichment based and not kind of tied into the curriculum. There was recommendations that it be approximately half of the length of a day of school, which could be 2.5 to 3 hours. But there wasn't a lot of guidance as to how much of that should be special education. In the beginning, it was educator directed, and students also could be self-directed in accessing some of the resources and some of the online remote learnings, but they were really only reinforcing skills already taught. It wasn't until there was a decision to extend school closures till the end of this school year where there was a shift on the part of our state Department of Education to say, wow, we really have to reinforce the content standards that are most essential for students to kind of move forward and pass. And how does it affect special education? So our federal government said that FAPE, or that free and appropriate public education that you get through the services on your IEP, is going to look different. And it was more on a case-by-case basis of the school district working with the family, making that communication, original communication to the family, and talking about what kind of services could they provide and how that was going to look for your student. And in the beginning, we just talked to families and said, this is really a change. It's a new challenging time. It's something we've never really gone through. We're all learning through all of this. So at this point, we're recommending to families to accept the services, the special education services that are offered, and then start to work with your school district to document everything as it happens so that you have a record week to week of what's happening, what's working, and what's not working. The recommendation from the attorneys that we have been working with is that you need to kind of work with your school district, and then you can have evidence and information and documentation of what is not working. But the most important thing is for students to access services. It's really going to help them make it through all of this and to provide some form of transition as we transition to whatever the new is, whether they need to access extended school year. This all information that you are going through right now and taking information in on your student will affect all of that in the future. So that's what we're recommending now, is that you work with your school district to identify what special education services can happen now, what can't happen, not even document why, if the school told you that they couldn't provide a service, and see how that's working for your student. It will look really different. If you were going to receive, say, speech 2 times 40 minutes a week, they might only offer one session. It might be an individualized session, or it might be with a group. It might actually work better for your student. It might be a one-on-one, more intensive service. So you really have to try it to see how it's working. So on April 21, we found out that schools are closed to the end of the school year, and that's where that shift happened, that the Department of Education here in Massachusetts said we really need to focus on content standards that are most critical for that student to advance to the next grade. And they have published on the Department of Ed website those content standards for elementary and secondary students, and they just put one out for preschool students, so that you have an understanding as a parent what are the critical things that your student needs to learn so that they can advance. And the expectation is that they're going to try to advance all students and not hold students back, because we realize that all students are affected by this school closure and by all the social emotional issues that go with having a pandemic and a crisis within our community, and that all students will regress. So the key is to try to get them to have the right skills to move forward. We're addressing the fundamental needs of the students, especially around special education. So those services should be focusing on those goals that are in your IEP. The IEP is just not going to be delivered exactly the way it is. And you should have some type of a plan with your school district. It's not part of the IEP, it's just how special education services will work remotely during this time period. and that's the third phase. The fourth phase, I don't have a slide for it, but that's when schools reopen, and that will be determined when that happens. We're not sure, but there would be a phase of rolling school admissions, or how it's going to look when we go back to in-person classes. So the last thing that was dealt with in a more formal guidance from our State Department of Education was around IEP meetings. And what we have learned is that remote IEP meetings can happen. A family does not have to sign a consent or waive any rights. Initially, there were some waivers of procedural rights that went out, and we advise families that you don't have to sign those. You have the right to an IEP meeting, and they don't need any formal consent. The guidance from the Department of Ed also spoke to school working days, because that's how we determine how many days have lapsed in this IEP process around evaluations or when a team meeting has to happen. The days were paused between when schools were closed formally on March 17th through April 9th, and that's when they determined that we were going to be moving forward with a more formal remote learning plan, and most schools had gotten their remote learning plans up and running. So those are days that are not considered part of the timeline. The school working days have been paused between March 17th and April 9th. You'll probably get some type of notice from the school around an IEP meeting if you were scheduled to have one. They use a form, it's called the N1 form, and that advises you what the school, how the school is going to act and what's going to happen. It's a notification form that doesn't require your signature, but it's a school formal notice to you. And a lot of that is happening around whether you will consent to an extension of your IEP annual meeting time, or initial eval, or reevaluation. And it's because we are in this period of things were on hold for a little while, and now everything's trying to get finished before the end of the school year. And in some cases, you may not want to meet with your school district remotely. That may not work for you. That might not be a perfect platform for you to advocate for your child. So you can have an extension, you can agree to an extension, and that would be a consent, a form that you sign to maybe extend it to the fall or to a later time. That's something that you can make a decision whether you want to move forward or not, and allow that to happen in, say, early fall. We advise you to make sure that you have extended to a date certain. So if you feel like, wow, it's just too much right now, and I really want to see how this is going, and I want to have this IEP meeting, but I want to have some more data and figure out where my student is, I need to meet, but I want to do it on September X. And so you set that date with the school so you know exactly when that's going to happen. It can happen for initial evaluations, reevaluations, or that annual IEP meeting. If there are any assessments that need to happen for any of those meetings, usually they're around an initial evaluation for special education or the reevaluation. Hopefully they have some assessment data, and they can do assessments remotely. They can't do all of the assessments remotely, but they might be able to gather enough data. They might be able to talk to you as a family member. They might be able to talk to an educator who's has experience working with a student and get enough data to be able to inform the team to make those decisions. And so that can happen remotely. It's something new to a lot of evaluators, and they're learning also. So we're still moving forward, hopefully, to assess a child and to determine whether they're eligible for special education. If you are on an IEP right now and a meeting cannot happen this spring, you're in a kind of a stay put place. All the services that you agreed to on your last IEP continue until a new IEP is made, and those dates, we're in this crisis period, so those dates kind of are on hold, so your IEP doesn't expire. You're on stay put until another meeting can happen. One of the areas that we're concerned with is around early intervention and transitioning out of that at age 3. We don't have full guidance yet on that, but there have been recommendations that the school districts either pick up these students from early intervention and provide remote services through early intervention special education, or that they ask for a waiver so that the student can still be served under early intervention. So we're still figuring that out. It's very difficult for young students who are getting home-based services and maybe not getting anything right now. But it's still so important that those students who are identified early get services to help them grow and develop and deal with their developmental challenges in those early years, because we know early intervention is the best for most of our students. So we have lots of challenges around what should be happening, and kind of helping you weigh some of your expectations of maybe my IEP services are going to look very different, and it's not exactly what I thought it would be, but let's give it a try. Let's document how it's going to go, and then we'll start to work with the school district. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions. We know that families are your parents are your child's best advocate. We're open here at the Federation. You can send us an email. You can go online. I think Danny's going to share the link to our online intake form. You can always send us an email with your questions. So that's my part of the presentation, and I'm going to stop here. Do I have to stop sharing screen?
Yes, you do. It's at the top.
At the top.
Should we take some questions now related to?
Yeah, for this particular presentation, yes.
Okay.
I think so.
All right.
Hold on one second, because I'm trying to get the last couple of questions here.
So do you want me to read any of them, or how?
Yeah, you can. You can.
Okay, so I'll start. I think the ones before are just not really questions. So my son is 18. He's graduating and going to college. He was up for his 3-year evaluation. He has a health IEP when COVID shut down, pausing us, and it took us to remote learning. I was wondering if he would need to complete any testing and what would need to be done if he wishes to access the Office of Disabilities at his college.
I'll take this one. Do you want me to answer it, Ruth?
Sure, I can chime in
Because
too.
it's more of a transition level. First of all, I'd contact the college and talk to them about what documentation they're going to require, because they might have waived some of their requirements due to the crisis. You can also talk to the school, and there might be enough documentation and information for them to have enough paperwork to transfer over to the college. Usually they're looking for adult level testing to see how the student would perform in an adult environment, a post-secondary environment. But I think I would first call the college and talk to the Office of Disability and see what you need, and then go back to the school and see if you can figure that out. The student has a diagnosis, and usually all of those materials are reviewed by the college to determine reasonable accommodations. Your IEP does not travel to college, but you can access reasonable accommodations within the college environment.
Okay. The next question, anything about extended school year? There hasn't been any guidance yet about that, but.
So right now we don't have guidance on extended school year. It looks like it might be remote learning. We don't have authorization from the governor to open up school buildings yet, and so what I've been recommending to CPACs is that they contact their school and say, what's your plan for the summer? Families need to plan. So you as a parent can call the school, but plan for remote extended school year if it's in your IEP. And if for some reason school buildings open, then there might be either a combination or a return to classes. But I would plan for remote extended school year.
How could SPED timelines, May 22nd, go so long without specific direction? It seems there are some legalities that come into play here.
So this is where Massachusetts has local authority, and what the Department of Education is talking about is guidance and recommendations. And so there has been a lot of shifting of what's going to happen and what's the legal requirements and determination. And we know that even when the federal government issued their first guidance on this, they really didn't address special education and had to come out with more guidance regarding special education. And I think this is where families can be advocates. If you don't have any special education services happening right now, you have two choices. You can talk to your school district and make sure that happens. And if it isn't happening in your school and you are feeling frustrated, then I would call the Problem Resolution Service at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They need notice that a school district is not offering any special education service for students. So we do have some opportunities for us to help a school district move forward to provide those services.
Is a school district legally obligated to help a student with an extensive IEP with an individualized RLP so they can engage in classwork if the student has removed themselves from the online learning and are failing their classes?
So this is what we've heard recently, is that approximately 1 in 5 students in the Boston School District have checked out. This is just not working for them. And that's good data to communicate to your school that the remote learning is not happening for your student, and that I think they need to figure out a different plan. For some students with very extensive challenges, remote learning may not be the best opportunity, but this is all we have right now. There is not an opportunity to have in-person services. So that they're supposed to be providing FAPE, but it will look different. So they're not in violation if they're providing something that's different. I think it's just the obligation of a family to start really communicating that this is what we've tried and it's not working, and you've documented it on a, some kind of form that the student tried to access, and it's not working.
Okay, what if the IEP is partially rejected?
Partially rejected.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I mean, if it's partially rejected, I mean, you got stay put. So, whatever is there is there. Nothing's changed. The special education laws haven't changed. It's still, you have an IEP that, is.
If it's a new IEP, it's an initial IEP, and you've rejected a section, then those services will not occur. That goal will not be addressed.
That's like transitioning from early intervention, or if your child is, just getting onto an IEP.
Right.
But typically,
But is there something that can be done from the parent if it was rejected?
You can always talk to your school about, this is an area that we rejected and we'd like a meeting, an IEP meeting, to discuss the rejected goal. And maybe you can come to some form of agreement. You always have mediation available to you. I'm not sure if they're doing facilitated IEP meetings, but there are ways for you to work with your school district to resolve these challenges. We did them in person before, we're just doing them remotely now. So talk to your school district, have another IEP meeting, suggest maybe mediation. I know they're happening. We've heard that good things are happening, and the remote meetings are working well.
One thing I can add is, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
One thing I can add is, if you have an IEP and then there's a stay put in there, is just to make sure that you contact the team. And as Leslie mentioned, just put a date when is the team has to meet, or when you want to have the next meeting. So at least when you come back, you have a specific date when you want to do it. So the kids, if you have classes going to go back in September and then you just stay put, you can have a meeting until like the following year. but you want to have a specific date, especially in the fall, so you can be able to have that services if your child, something that you are not agreeing on the IEP, so you can be able to meet and with the team, and then you can discuss that so you can be able to move on to the next phase.
And it's going to be a busy fall, so get the date now.
Yes,
Yep.
definitely. And the one thing that I think Leslie touched base on that about the stay put. So a lot of the parents, they don't understand the stay put, and when they said, okay, yeah, we want to meet for another time, so they thinking that the IEP is not, the kids are not going to be able to get any services. So some parents, they're thinking, oh yeah, I'm not going to sign the IEP, I just stay put. So if the school, you have to make sure that your child is getting the services prior of whatever they had in the IEP. So you have to follow up with the school and also check with your child to make sure, hey, did Miss Maria, did OT, or did, so and so happen? Because sometimes you stay put, and then some districts, they do not do the services, and that's it until you meet again. So that's to make sure that those communication are being intake. And also,
I'm a little concerned that people are relying on these remote learning plans. That's not the legal document. You don't attach it to an IEP. It's just really letting you know in a more formal way what services and how they're going to be dealt with during this period of school closure in a remote setting. And so if you feel that they haven't addressed one of the services and they're saying, well, we can't do that right now, I would really get a sense of why they can't. They can't say we don't have the personnel and whatever. They just need to figure it out. And it's going to be challenging for a lot of students. And it's not going to look the same. I think if you had a one-on-one paraprofessional assisting your student all day long, that's not going to happen. But could that paraprofessional support the student in a remote classroom? And so when they broke into groups, that paraprofessional could go along and help prompt the student with questions and get them to respond and get them to answer. I'm hearing lots of really interesting things happening. So you need to be that squeaky wheel to make sure that you're getting those services.
that is correct. Also mentioned that, Leslie, that some of the parents, some of the students who has an IEP, that they have, if they have like OT 4 times a week, and then now they're getting OT once or twice a week. So they're thinking that they're probably gonna get complementary hours. So we have to make sure that parents knows, and as well, whatever the district is, or DESE, or what's the plan coming up, what is happening now, what can be done virtual, and are they going to be able to get compensatory or not? So I think that people thinking on that way too.
One thing parents have to be careful about rejecting any services and then claiming that they need compensatory services, because that's not a good posture to be in. If you turn down services and then claim that you didn't get what you needed for your child. So just be careful to accept all the services that are being offered and engage them the best you can, and keep the school informed if they're not working and why they're not working, and take the feedback that they give you for trying to try different things to make it work, because it's difficult for everyone in this situation. It's difficult for the teachers and everyone trying to provide services. And when it comes later on to claiming compensatory services, it will be a case-by-case evaluation. And one of the things that they're going to look at is, did the parent try everything that was offered? So just
because it takes not only a couple of weeks for the student to get used to this whole new platform, so you have to try it multiple times. That's something we recommend. Every student in Massachusetts is going to regress during this time. Every student is getting less services. So it's not like a one-on-one. It's not if I got services 5 days a week and I'm only getting it 2, I get 3 more, services in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You're not putting that in the bank. I think what they'll probably do in the fall is do some type of an assessment around the student and their learning, but just realize that they're being measured against every other student who has regressed. Every student is not receiving full education during this time. So I think Ruth's right. Accept the services and play the game, and it just might work better for your student.
Yeah, you said it right. You have to play the game. You have to jungle of different things to see what's best for your child and then what exactly. But I think some of the parents, especially in the which is new, that they're probably finding out that their kids, oh my God, my child cannot read, or I need to have a new testing I want my kid to be testing. So this is going to be something new for them. And maybe that, just to start or they're in the process of doing the IEP. So now they have to say, okay, what kind of services that my child needs? So those kind of the things that we have to make sure that parents understand, and what is the right way to do it for them, and what is the right direction to go for it as well. Because some of them, is their first time. Some of them, they like, this is new and there's some changes taking place. So they want to make sure they're familiar with it as well.
In the sake of time, and we still have another presentation to get by, I want to be able to get through some of the other questions or get started on the next presentation and then return to the questions so that we make sure that all of the parents get their questions answered.
And I just want to remind people that we do have a information center, a call center at the Federation. It doesn't cost anything. You can fill out an intake form in the middle of the night, and we have very good people, a lot of parents, professionals with a lot of experience in special education available to answer your questions and to get more details from you and talk to you for a while. So please do take advantage of that resource if you have specific questions about your kids.
And we've been posting a lot of these resources we're discussing in the chat, but we'll also send a follow-up email to everyone after this with all of the resources we've posted and all the phone numbers that you can use. So don't get discouraged if your question doesn't get answered here, because we will be following up with another email to make sure those questions get answered.
Yep.
And continue, Ruth, and we'll answer some questions at the end too.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to do this.
Just click share your screen.
Okay.
And then you'll just choose which one you want to share, and it should pop up for you.
Okay. Did it? Is it there?
Yep, you're all set. Just start your slideshow.
Okay.
I think we got the other view.
So I am the Parent Training and Information Center Director. And
I'm so sorry, Ruth. It's only very, very small. Is there a way that you can make it the presentation so that it can make it bigger?
Oh, you're in presenter view, Ruth. If you just change it to the regular slideshow, it should work.
Okay, how do I do that? I don't know how to do it.
The screen might be...
The screen, the next one, it says a little bit big.
Yeah. The icon that has the screen.
With the slash on it.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that it?
Let's see.
Let's see.
No.
What about the one next after that?
Actually, you know what? Just come out, Ruth. I'll do it for you.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm glad we had that backup plan.
Oh, yeah.
This is my first time trying to share a screen.
Teamwork. There we go.
Is this the right one, right? All right. I'm just using my little thing here. Okay, just let me know when you need me to switch it there.
Okay, so next slide. Okay, so Parent Training and Information Center. It's part of the special education law. So we were the original Parent Training and Information Center. And basically the idea is that it's so important for parents to participate in the special education process. But in order to do that, they need to have an education about how the system works, because it's very complex. My background, I'm a lawyer. Just like 85% or more of our staff, I have a child with special needs who is an adult now. And so it's a parent organization. So most of the people at the Federation have been parents or are parents now. And so our job is to educate parents about the special education process. So next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk today about, as Leslie said, the special education laws are all still in effect. I want to talk a little bit about the DESE Family Resource Toolbar, and how to specifically support your child in the learning environment at home, and if you're not getting assignments from school, what to do, and then finally to talk a little bit about a couple of resources. Next slide. Okay. So this is from the federal government, Department of U.S. Education, and they said basically FAPE must be provided during this period of time, but it's not gonna, they can't do it the way they have been doing it in the school. And it's very important for everybody to stay safe. So that's a huge priority. How are we going to do that in these current circumstances? Next slide. Okay, so it's just very difficult to provide those one-on-one services that we've been having while the schools were open, and there are children that are just not going to get what they need during this period of time. And the thing that, as we said earlier, you need to document it and be prepared to show that you have fully cooperated in trying to do the best that you can under these very difficult circumstances, the same as the teachers are doing, and the school administrators are doing, and that you need to have compensatory services in order to bring your child back to somewhere close to where he or she was before. But just remember, there are a lot of people who are going to be looking for compensatory services, so you really are going to have to try to make a strong case for it, and cooperating to get these services delivered to the best of everybody's ability is going to be a big issue for people to look at. Okay, so and then remote services needed to start immediately, and I think the approach for DESE was do what you can right now. Like, try to get the kids that you can serve easily, get that going and build from there. And you don't need to have any kind of consent. It's not a change in placement because of the pandemic. It's not doesn't require any kind of consent or anything like that. Special education is in effect, but you should receive a plan, from your school about how things are going to happen. That's not the right direction. Even I know that. Okay, next slide. Okay. So I can't see the top of the screen. It's green. Is there some reason for that? Okay. All right. So here's this DESE Family Resource Tool. It's actually a tool box, but this is the prevailing wisdom from everyone, that it's very important, just like when your kids are in school, to have a stable school type schedule. You get up at the same time, you have breakfast, if you pledge allegiance to the flag, you can do that, whatever your child wants to do to make it feel familiar and like part of a routine, and to know ahead of time that, okay, we're going to do this thing now, and then in 20 minutes, here's what we're going to do, and then you're going to have a break, and if you get to you do this assignment with me, then you can play with your Legos for a while, whatever the favorite activity is. And DESE is recommending 3.5 to 4 hours of learning time. We have to also acknowledge that when we do our very best, it may not be exactly that, but try your very, very best to have some kind of a routine and to keep your children on track. Next slide. Now, we always, as a lawyer, I always like to have parents keep records. I encourage that, because later on you won't remember what happened. And so if you have a a way that is comfortable for you. It could be a calendar, or it could be a notebook. And we also have a form that you can use. But figure out some way to keep track of who contacted you, when, and what happened. Did they give you an assignment? Was your child able to do the assignment? You know, if they didn't want to do the assignment, what happened? Did they throw themselves on, did the child throw himself on the floor? Or, you know, did he just put his head down on the desk? Whatever happened, you know, record what anybody looking at it would see as a documentation of the struggles that you're having at home to try to get your children to do what's very difficult to do for everybody here. You consider having a schedule that, you know, some children like to be able to see pictures and, you know, make up, you can do it together. Create a schedule, a visual schedule to keep kids on track. But it's very, very important to have a space, create a space. So if it's the dining room table and that's where you typically eat, or the kitchen table, you got to clear it all off, and, you know, turn it into the classroom, so that it has the feeling of a quiet space and free from clutter, dedicated to the purpose of educating your child. Next slide. Okay, here's the form that we have created with other people. There's been input from a number of people to create this, just to give you an idea of maybe what you might want to keep track of. You know, including, though, I think how your child is responding to remote learning, and the challenges that you're having, maybe challenges you're having getting in touch with teachers, whatever the issues are. Next slide. So DESE is saying limit the distractions. You know, if you need to, use a visual countdown timer. Reward your child, you know, for staying on task, and try to get the child to finish tasks, but be patient, be generous, and be encouraging, be very positive. Next slide.
Let me just, I'm going to pause this for a quick second and go back in because it's showing this little window. Every time when someone's trying to get in. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Is that the right slide? Are we in the right place? Okay. Yeah? Okay. All right. So what to do if the school doesn't provide you any lessons? And I think by this point, everybody should have been contacted by the school. Everybody should have a plan with the school. It should be a weekly plan. You know, English language arts is happening on Monday at 9 o'clock. You know, gym at 10, whatever it is. It should be a full schedule for 3.5 to 4 hours per day. And if you're not getting that, you need to go to the school and let them know, hey, I need more assistance here. So contact the teacher first. Start with the teacher, and then if you don't get what you need from the teacher, you need to go over the teacher's head. You know, give your teacher a chance to respond, but you know, it's not. It should be a day or two. It shouldn't be a week or two. If you don't get a response, then go to your team chair, go to the special education director, go to the principal, go to the superintendent, and then your last option is to go to the problem resolution system. You can contact them online, just Google problem resolution systems, and there's a form that you can either fill out or you can call to talk to somebody about your complaint, and they can help you screen it and figure out if there are things you can do without having to make a complaint. But if not, you write out a complaint. You know, it's been what, 8 weeks now, no plan, or I'm not getting the kind of support I need. I've tried, this is what I've done to try to get the support, and you know, my child is not getting the education that other kids are getting or that he or she needs. Next slide. Okay. So now we're going to talk about how to support your child at, you know, with the school assignments. You know, I think it's, first of all, talking to your child about what's going on. You know, there's a virus, you're safe, we're safe. As long as we do certain things, we have to wash our hands. You know, you have that type of conversation. We use face masks, we social distance. You can meet up with your friends on Zoom or on Google, what is it? Google Hangout. But you know, do some preparation with your child. We're going to do schooling at home because this is what we need to do right now. Things are going to go back to normal at some point. We don't know when. But here's what we have to do now because your education is very important. And so, you know, this is your future. And, you know, talk to your child. What is your future? What do you want to be when you grow up? You know, okay, well, if you want to do that, then here's what you need to do in order to get there. And, you know, reading is part of everything that we do in life. So learning how to read and learning how to do math, you know, teaching your child, okay, math is very important. Why? Let's make a cake and see how we have to use math to make a cake or to make some cookies. You know, explaining to them what it is that they're learning and why it's important and what they're going to be doing to learn those lessons. And if the lessons look like they might be a little bit challenging, try to do a little bit of research to figure out, you know, what kind of background information can I provide the child? If I do a Google search, can I find some information about, you know, I don't know, the Civil War? Is there a YouTube or a Netflix or something about, or a documentary about Civil War or whatever the topic is, and to try to give your child some background. Okay, next slide. So this is, you know, important to do. Read the instructions together. Make sure that the child understands by having the child read the instructions back to you, or just explain what they understood from the instructions. Work on the tasks together. The first one, make sure the next problem, they work on that by themselves. You watch them and make sure that they can follow the directions and guide them through. You know, this is like we're teachers now at home. Who would have thought? Next slide. If your child is able to work independently, just walk away and let them work independently. But then make sure that you check back on them and make sure that they are, you know, able to complete the task. Next slide. Oh, this is a good one for me. Do not give them answers. Make sure they do the work, and you know, don't let them trick you into giving the answers either. But you know, it's fine to have them work with their friends. In fact, it would probably be fun for them to do some assignments. You can mix it up. I discovered that Zoom is free, but if you only use it for 40 minutes, so you can set up a Zoom meeting, learn how to, set up an account, go into Zoom, set up a meeting, send your friend an invitation, and you've got 40 minutes before they cut you off. So, yep, and just keep trying to make it as interesting as possible for your child by doing things in different ways. Next slide. Okay, so here we're at resources. This curriculum frameworks family guide is just wonderful. I don't know if anybody has seen it. It's really, I mean, even if we weren't in this situation, you should really take a look at it. We always encourage parents to look at the curriculum frameworks anyway, but they've made it a lot easier by providing this family guide. And it basically helps you understand grade by grade what each child should be learning. And it's available in multiple languages. And, so you can look, I looked at a couple of them. It gives you a lot of ideas about how to talk to your child about education, what they're learning. These are the kind of things that teachers do. They don't just say, well, like I would have said, how was your day? What did you learn today? They would ask much more specific questions about, what did you think about, this program on, history, traveling to Europe, or what it's like to be an astronaut. Also, I don't know if everybody knows about the WGBH distant learning centers. The Department of Special Education, Massachusetts, DESE, Department of Education, they partnered with WGBH, and they have these wonderful programs. You can do any, like 5 or 6 different subjects. So basically, even if you cannot get your child to sit down and do the assignment provided by school, you can at least sit down and do every day, do a session on math, another day English, science, physical ed, arts. There are different programs, and you can, your child will still be learning. And it's something that even if you are not able to do online assignments with the school, you made that effort, and you can put that into your report to the school when you claim that you need additional compensatory services. The DESE toolkit is there, and also the form that I showed earlier about keeping a remote learning record. So that's it for right now. If you have questions, we'll look at what the questions are. I can't seem to do that.
So I just wanted to add that I homeschooled my younger son for 2 years when school really didn't work. And it's very, very difficult. So I empathize with all of the families out there that are trying to do this, and the expectations that you're supposed to support your student without a lot of training. That's feedback that we're giving the Department of Education, that it's difficult for a lot of families, especially if you're sharing a device or you're sharing time. It's really hard. And I found that, as Ruth was saying, if you can somehow get your student engaged in something and then tie everything together. And sometimes it's not really what they're learning, but just the fact that they're learning. So follow their passion, and that'll lead you into directions, and maybe you can incorporate some math or some reading around something that your student is really, really interested in. And if they can connect with some of their friends, I think that's also very important. These students need to have that social and emotional development happening, and interacting with their peers is pretty important also during this time. So there's lots of ways to keep your students engaged.
And somebody mentioned Google Hangout is a way you can connect to. So if you have an account with Google, you can do that. Yeah, absolutely. Kids, parents, I know I'm connecting with friends and stuff like that with people I know on Google and I'm actually on Zoom. And kids need it just as much as we do. So take the time to do that.
So I love the question about someone saying, well, how do you support life skills at home? And I'm like, this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
This is when your
I can't see the questions. I'm sorry. I can't see the questions.
They're in the chat box?
I don't have access, to Danny.
Okay. So that's, to me, this is the perfect time to have your child cook and do the laundry and clean their room and exercise the pets and, help you stay organized. These are all great life skills. You're also have this unique opportunity to watch your student learn. Whether you're giving 2-step instructions at home and see if they can follow that, and then maybe 3-step instructions. And once again, try to write down what you're doing with your student, what's working and what's not working. We're finding that so many families are finally seeing special education being served to their student. And for so many years, we sent our kids away to school and we didn't know how that IEP plan was being implemented. And even though you're not getting the 5 times 60 a week, maybe that 2 times 20 is so much more beneficial to your child, or at least you're now seeing how your student is really learning and what's working and what's not working. Let's use this as a creative time.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time and in the spirit of time and making sure that we get a lot of people's questions answered. I'm thinking we may not have time to get to everyone, but I definitely want to leave them with contact information, organizations, and people that they can connect with so they don't walk out of here with nothing. So would it be possible for me to share, for us to share who they can contact or people they can follow or pages that they can follow so that they can eventually get that ongoing support?
Definitely call the call center. You can call us, or you can use the online intake form. Go to the front page of our website, www.fcsn.org. Fill out an intake form. You can do it in the middle of the night. You can do it anytime you get a chance to write down your question, and someone will call you back. We usually can do it at the next day, so definitely within 48 hours, and someone will.
Especially if you're new to special education, now's a good time to have a conversation with one of us at the Federation about how things work. If it's your first IEP meeting, it's a virtual IEP meeting. Wow, you really need to have us walk you through the process, who's going to be there, how that happens, what your role is. We're doing a lot of our trainings online. So the Federation also has a YouTube channel, and you go to our main page in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the little logo, the icon for YouTube. If you click on that, all of the webinars that we've done recently about issues around COVID-19 and school closures are there. Those were done with attorneys with the Department of Education. Russell Johnson, who's the Associate Commissioner in charge of special education, just did one with us. And so you can watch those YouTube videos. We have our basic rights workshops up there, all of our live stream presentations that are happening on our Facebook page. All of that is available for you to watch through YouTube. That's all free and open access. We have a Facebook page. You can always send us a message through Facebook and somebody will get back to you. There's lots of ways to connect with us and keep in touch. It's just everybody has a different question and different little nuance of where they're at.
Right. But as Danny mentioned earlier, we're going to try our best. We're keeping track of all of these questions, and we're going to do our best to follow up with everybody afterwards. So we don't want anyone to be discouraged and feel like, they're still lost. We're going to try our best to
We're
get
all lost.
Yes. I also want to quickly introduce Fabian Elias Singh. She will be able to introduce who she is and how she could support families going forward, because she's also a parent that has kind of mastered how to navigate the special education system, specifically students with dyslexia. And I wanted to give her like a few minutes to kind of share with families how she could serve as ongoing support.
Great. Thank you, Evelis. Hi, my name is Fabian Elison. I am a BPS parent, also an advocate with Parents Organization for Students with Special Needs, especially with dyslexia and ADHD. So the work that I've been working with parents, whether in one-on-one in small groups, and trying to navigate and give some resources, whether with the Federation, with BPS, or other organizations decoding dyslexia, what exactly that they can be able to help them and support them. So what I've been, there's a documentary that came out last Friday, and I'm sharing, and I'll be able to share with all of you guys. You can be able to see the struggles parents are going through, and most often when we come to in a space, they telling us that it's whether they tell us no or they don't give us the answers or what we're looking for. So I think the Federation is doing a good job in a way to trying to just manipulate the parents and give them the tools and the resources that they need. But sometimes we do work in a silo where not everybody is getting all the informations. So what we intend to trying to reach out to the parents and English learners, the Haitian communities, the Cape Verdean communities, and do all the channels that we can be able to cover, and then to be able to give them that. So this is a great information that we can share the website, but we also have to be mindful that some of the parents, they don't have the computers. I just found out over 10,000 students in the school district still doesn't have Google's. They don't have the work computer to do the remote learning. And when I asked and said, okay, what are we going to do with those students? They said, well, we're going to try to figure out to reach out to all of them, trying to see if we can be able to give ESY to them. But we also have to mindful some of the families, the kids probably lost the mother, the grandmother, and so on during this time. So that's something that we also have to be mindful on that. But I am really grateful that we can come in and trying to give the support and the help with those in needs, and trying to see what other ways we can reach out to those students who are not going to be able to get where they need to be when it comes in September or whenever we go back to school. So as we know, the Federation, the school is talking about budget. They don't have enough resources for teachers, that they don't have enough to be able to teach. Yes, they will be able to do assessment. When we do those assessments, what's going to be the next thing? So that's a question that I need to put it out there. How are we going to be able to help them? Are they going to be get longer hours of services, and what's that going to be the outcome for it? So I think there is a lot of questions we need to address, and we need to be able to just shift it, but which is great, and encourage parents, call the Federation, call different organizations who can be able to help and guide them and to support them as much as we can. So if any
I'm hoping families really advocate right now to connect to the school, to let them know we don't have a device, and what is your plan to get us a device? Really be that squeaky wheel. If you need something from the school, let it be known what your needs are right now. I wouldn't wait till the fall. I'm really concerned about, we have an opportunity this summer when schools close and we go to extended school year. There might be able to deliver more services to your student because there's less students to work with. And I'm a parent of a student who went through school with dyslexia, and I read to my son every single night all through high school. Reading together and having your son or daughter be exposed to language all the time is so important. And they can read the ingredients on that brownie box right now when you're cooking for dessert, and that's motivation. If you want brownies, you got to read me the box. Figure it out.
Which is great because I think somebody was trying to find out, what kind of a reading instructions. Because I am not gonna. There's so many. Each school has their own agenda or their own schools, different ways that they'll be able to just put resources for them. My daughter is getting Wilson. You have Wilson, you have OG, but sometimes during the different time of it, they were getting it 5 times a week or 4 times a week. Now they're not getting it. Like you mentioned, continue reading, and my daughter, she reads at least twice a day, whether it's for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then she also have the audiobooks and Bookshare, so she get all the tools and the resources that I can. Sometimes I said, okay, yeah, just read aloud for me, and I can be able. And then when she's mumbling the word, I'll be like, okay, spell it out, tap it. So the reading, the phonological awareness is continual. It's not just for when they're doing the reading with the teachers. It's on every single thing that they're doing. Like you mentioned, we cook, we bake. Okay, how many what does it say? How many cups of flowers do I need to put on? So she's doing that. So
That's great.
skills is another thing that we do at home. We cooking, like we having cooking classes. We're doing arts together. We're doing gardening. So I have my nieces, and she has the support in needs, but also what you mentioned about the Google Chrome, parents has to be able to contact the district. Yes, some of the parents, they do receive the Google Chrome, but they don't have the internet, or they don't have the money to pay for the internet.
So
Now,
there is free
be able
access in Boston through Comcast, and I think that's another thing to talk to your district about. Is there an opportunity to get a hotspot through your local public library? We have to work out ways. We have to figure this out. There is a bill in I believe it's in the House now, or it's in the Senate, asking for more state dollars to purchase equipment and to get internet access. It's happening out in the western part of the state where there isn't good internet access, and families, can't access remote learning. We have a lot of challenges, but until we start, making it known to the district what the needs are, then we can plan for it.
Do you find that parents are afraid to ask for?
I have parents that when they ask, they fill out the form, they ask, it takes such a long time for them to just get a response back. And what I told them, continue, send an email, get a name, write down the name. When the time you talk to, you call in the morning, call in the afternoon, just write it down and then send it to the principal or send it to that. Where I had issues with my computer, with my daughter's computer. I got it in a couple of days. It's not because that they know me. Yes, I push for it. I should have get it like 2-3 days. But there's other things that's happening. They came in and delivered to my house. So that's great. But some of the people, they still don't know how to navigate the system, and I'm trying to inform them. You have to be the first lawyer, teacher, advocate for your child, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you. You might be able to support, but the main thing is trying to make sure that you keep pushing and just to make sure you get all the information you need.
My question is, I'm sorry, that what we're not taking into consideration here are the families that don't speak English. So they want to contact and they want to advocate, and the resources are out there, but it's bridging the gap between the families and the resources. If a person doesn't speak English, they cannot navigate the web the way that the resources are on the website. Yes, but if they don't read the language, they cannot navigate that. And so that's why I was asking for the call center. Is the call center something that's ready to pick up phone calls from people with other languages?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we have the capacity to answer questions in Spanish, in Haitian, in Chinese, and in Portuguese.
Awesome.
And the other thing is the school district is also required to provide a translator for you. So they should have a translator on the phone line if you've identified that you need to talk to the school and have somebody translate for you. Same thing as a IEP meeting. They should have a translator there. There's a new program the Department of Ed has chosen 5 school districts. I believe Boston's one, Lawrence. I don't know the other 3.
Holyoke, Southbridge. Yeah, they have a system set up to provide translation
services. So
if you have a parent who speaks one of the languages that we can easily address, you can have them contact, and we can help the parent by calling the school. If you're feeling, if the parent is feeling like they're not getting a response, don't let that stop you. Get in touch with us, and we'll call the school for the parent.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's good to know.
That is
And
good. Thank you.
I would also just comment for parents who don't know how to read, regardless of language, or who have their own learning disabilities or cognitive disorders. And so one of the things that I'm hoping for, is for everybody to know that this is the first of many conversations to come. I would plug in for parents and caregivers and advocators to stay informed. Everybody jumped on this call tonight. Continue to learn as information is rolling out. But more importantly, share what you learned with your neighbors and friends and family members, so that way you can be some of that bridge and address some of these barriers for people to be able to connect. And sometimes when we're sharing it and explaining it, we can explain it for folks the way they can comprehend it and understand it. And also rallying on our partnerships, because we might be the trusting force for most folks. So not only learn it, but go back and share it with your neighbors and your families and your friends, and continue to support them and let them know that there are people out here. Sometimes it takes for us to be the bridge for folks, and support making those connections. So thinking through that everybody who might want to participate for whatever reason may not be able to participate, but that there are tons of folks out here advocating on everyone's behalf.
One thing that one thing I will add, because a lot of the parents, they come to this, they cannot homeschool, or they cannot, because they're overwhelmed. So they have their own issues that going through right on their mind. They worried about the rent, the food, and everything else. So they probably need more support for social emotional for the students. And where I'm trying to just push that the district should be able to have social emotional for every student. It's not kids who have it on an IEP or based on the behavior they have. It should be for all of them, because they kids, when they come back, yes, the academic, they can be able to just maneuver it, they can be able to pick it up. But if you have a kid who's disoriented, who's traumatized, like where parents are traumatized, and so many people are going to those limbo right now, we need to address as much as we can right now. Not just.
I think that's the one issue that families can help schools figure out when we talk about reentry in the plans, is how do we look at that with a trauma lens? How do we make sure that school is safe for all students? And I just want families to know that as a parent, you can get support. We have a project at the Federation called Family Ties, and there's some really wonderful people that can provide that one-on-one parent support for you as you're struggling. We know that when you talk to another parent, you get the information that you need a lot of times, and great resources and local resources. So yay, Sharita, let's all connect and let's all share this good information. We need to get through this together. It's going to be difficult. It's difficult now. Stay tuned, keep learning, ask questions, be an advocate. And I think what will happen is your child will see you as a leader, with whatever skills you have, you're fighting for them, and you're trying to get them to learn appropriately. And this is what the Federation's all about, is helping you to become an advocate for your child. And when you get stuck, give us a call and we can help.
Okay.
I just want to point out to Sariani. Hi, Sariani. She put her information on here, so if you want to contact her directly.
Yeah, Shay's also on here. She's our person who speaks Haitian Creole, and she's our outreach person for PTI and works with the MASFEC project.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, these are all resources that we posted in chat. We're going to share them with everyone after this, but feel free to reach out to any one of us to get guided in the right direction. And as Sharita said, this is the start of a series of conversations and webinars that we want to have to support families. So, be sure to, even if there's a topic or something that you'd like to discuss or get more information about, pop it in the chat, contact one of us and let us know. And we'll start to form these webinars based on, this is about what the families and parents need. So, if you have some feedback from it, if you have resources to share, please feel free to share them. And we'll make sure it gets out to everyone.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out to Cambria, because she's busy here putting down resources in the chat.
Cambria!
Thank you, Cambria. All
We have
right.
elves working behind the scenes.
So thank you everyone for
Yeah.
this is a nice sized group, and yes, only the beginning of a several series. And if possible, we would like to have some of these in entirely different languages. So if we had to have the exact same webinar in Haitian Creole, we are happy to do that if that's what is needed. And so we have a needs assessment survey in the group chat. That'll help us learn what the needs are so that we can create the kind of platforms that are needed. So feel free to go on the chat and take a look at that survey and fill it out if possible. Thank you so much to the Federation for doing this. This is amazing. I love all of the resources that were shared here today. And I hope that people are walking out of here hopeful that, you know, that we're in this together and we're doing the best that we can to make sure that everyone is fully supported, not just in education, but in all of our websites. We have a list of categories that we're willing to make sure that the entire family has all the needs that they have in addition to education help. So thank you to everyone who attended here today. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to share?
I just want to say thank you and to CPLAN. You guys did a great job, you know, and really appreciate the invitation to work with you guys. So.
Absolutely.
Yes, this was amazing. Thank you so much, guys.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.